Hi there, I'm Cher, and this is Diary of a Pen Nerd. So today I had quite a few thoughts about fountain pens and ink and journals and kind of the hobby as a whole, and what I am going to call slow consumption. um, and because I feel like this has kind of been a topic that's been floating around in the various different communities and is something that a lot of people are being more aware of and conscious of. And so I figured I would throw my 2 cents in, even though no one asked, but just for fun to kind of share my thoughts on it all. So I guess going all the way back to when I originally got into fountain pens. I discovered fountain pens kind of as a concept in about 5th or 6th grade, which was 8 or 9 years ago now. And originally I had an original interest in fountain pens, mostly because of the vintage inspiration. I really like old things, and not just fountain pens, but also, I have a typewriter, and I, like to do things like tea dye paper and embroidery samplers, and so fountain pens kind of just naturally fits into what I like and gravitate towards hobby-wise already. But I also really liked the ability that fountain pens give you to create a really unique writing experience. You customize the pen and the nib and the ink and the paper, and you can come up with a one-of-a-kind writing experience, and I really liked that aspect of it too. So that was kind of what originally got me into fountain pens. And as I think about that, what originally got me into fountain pens being the writing experience, that can kind of shape how I go about this hobby and how I go about consuming for this hobby. So this year, thus far, I've bought 2 pens and 2 bottles of ink, which is, I don't know, pretty decent, I feel. And so the first pen I bought was this Kaweco Collection dark olive with an extra fine nib. The story with this one goes that it was in my collection previously. It was a gift that my mom got me for achieving a personal goal of mine, and it was very special to me. It was my first Kaweco, and I think maybe my 2nd or 3rd ever fountain pen. And so it was really special to me. And then I lost it on a school trip, and I was so sad, but I didn't repurchase it, or I tried to, and then where I had bought it was out of stock, and so then I swapped it out for the mellow blue and didn't get it. And then this year for my birthday, which is in January, my mom bought, because as the years were going on, this was a limited edition and it was becoming harder and harder to find, and I was becoming, increasingly sad that I thought it wasn't ever going to be in my collection again. Well, this year for my birthday, my mom bought me another one, which was so kind and so special. And within a couple of weeks, I had lost it again. This is actually so crazy because I almost never lose pens. I do a very good job keeping track of my pens, and so it was really insane to lose the same pen twice, and not only twice, but within weeks of getting it again. And because I was still so sad and it was still on my mind, I went ahead and purchased it a third time. So this is the third Kaweco Collection Dark Olive to be in my possession, and it is the last because I will never lose this pen. But it's very special to me. So this is pen number 1 that I bought this year. And then pen number 2, I actually don't have with me right now, but it was a Pilot Kakuno, and I just got that one very recently, and I have been enjoying it a lot. It's the mother from the family series, so I think it's coral or red, and it's a medium nib, and it's so cute. The reason I don't have it right now is because I lent it to my mom and she hasn't given it back to me yet, but that's okay. So those are the 2 pens that I have bought this year, and then the 2 bottles of ink that I've bought this year. I bought these technically at like the very end of last year, like one of the first days of this year, I don't remember, but it's these 2, Diamine Lavender and Colorverse Night of Myrtle, and then at the same time I also got a couple of ink samples. So as far as slow consumption goes, I think that's fairly decent. You know, we're into August and I haven't bought a ton. I don't know if had financial circumstances been different this year, if I would have bought more. But that's kind of where my consumption for this year has been. And I'm okay with that, and I like that. And I do have plans to buy more ink and more pens in the somewhat near future, but I'm not in any rush. So I think this is a good place to be. One place that I get myself into a little bit of trouble is I like to visit the fountain pen subreddit. And on there, some people will post their state of the collection as beginners. They'll be like, you know, I'm a couple months into the hobby or 6 months into the hobby or whatever it is, and they'll post their collection. And occasionally they have, you know, quite large collections. And sometimes, you know, I can compare myself a little bit, and you know, comparison is the thief of joy. And I think to myself, you know, how great would it be if, you know, I could try out that many pens in such a short amount of time, or what have you. And so I do kind of, you know, have that aspect of it too. But I also have this other aspect where I call myself a penny pinching Scrooge, in that I don't like to spend money ever for anything. And fountain pens as a hobby, I consider to be quite frivolous. And so I do frequently tell myself no, and I can talk myself out of buying just about anything for my hobby. And most of the time that's actually pretty good, because I don't need to be buying something all the time. But sometimes, you know, I have to give myself permission to purchase things within my budget without guilt. I don't have to feel guilty for buying a pen when it suits me. And I don't have to overanalyze every decision that I make regarding that. And so that's one thing that I'm working on just overall in my life is, I'm not going to be financially devastated if, within my budget, I spend money on things that aren't necessities, and learning to, deal with that and overcome that struggle. Given that I'm still really focused on the writing experience and having unique writing experiences and writing experiences that make me really happy. I'm trying to find new ways to enjoy the writing experiences using primarily what I have and finding novelty in what I have. And one way that I do that is by rotating things out. So for the first 5-ish months of the year, I was in school, and so my pens I would take to school with me every day and would use for a lot of notes and things like that. And I was really using this pen a lot when I was in school for the spring semester. And so when summertime hit, I decided that because I used this pen so much in the spring semester that I kind of wanted to set it aside for a little bit and explore some pens that maybe hadn't been inked up in a while. And that's what led me to inking up my Kaweco Hello Kitty Sports. And these are some of my favorite pens in my collection, and I hadn't inked them up in months. And because they are a little bit more precious to me, so I get more nervous taking them to school. I have taken them to school in the past, but it does scare me a little. So now that I'm home at most of the time and doing most of my writing at home, I inked them up, and I've been really, really enjoying using these pens now that I am using them almost as if they were brand new to me. So that's been super exciting. Another thing that I do to add novelty into my collection is to maybe break out of walls that I had maybe put myself in. So this is my Wing Sung Fude nib, and I really like to put Sailor Yurameku Amamoyoi in this pen. Amamoyoi is one of my favorite inks. I love chroma shaders. I love putting it in this pen because the Fude nib lays down such a thick line that the shading comes out really, really nicely. And so for months and months after I got that ink, that was the only ink that I ever had in this pen. And then after a while, I was starting to maybe get a little bored. And so since then, I've been playing with putting different inks in this pen and exploring what maybe even familiar inks to me look like when I can put down a really big line. So right now I have Monteverde Malibu Blue in this pen, and I'm having a lot of fun with that too, so that's pretty fun. And so these are different ways that I add novelty to my hobby without necessarily having to buy anything else. And another aspect of this is that to me, there is no such thing as a hole in my collection. I feel like it would be really easy for me to fall into the trap of, oh, well, I don't have a pen from this brand, so therefore I should get one to try it out, to maybe fill a hole in my collection. Or I don't have an ink in a certain color, so I should get one to fill a hole in my collection. But to me, there's no such thing as a hole in my collection. My collection, my hobby, could be complete right where it is right now. And so I am in no rush to fill any kind of perceived gaps, because I know that, there's fountain pens that are not a necessity. And also, as we're talking about slow consumption, you consume fountain pens quite slowly. If I get a bottle of ink, even a 30 milliliter bottle of ink, how long is it going to take me to go through that? Probably years. And, the more 30 milliliter bottles of ink that I have, the longer it's going to take me to go through each one. And when I think about how long it's going to take me to go through just the bottles that I have right now, I get a little bit overwhelmed and maybe think to myself that I'll never buy another bottle of ink again. But at the same time, this is a hobby and it's meant to be enjoyed, and it is something that I really enjoy. So I have to walk this line between my hobby as something that I'm allowed to enjoy and can be a little bit impractical and frivolous and whatnot, but also making sure that I'm keeping it within practicality for me. To me, having tons of bottles of ink would be really overwhelming, but if there's another ink that I really like, I'm not strictly locked into this no bottles of ink. I'm allowed to buy a bottle of ink, and I'm allowed to want things. I don't have to feel any kind of guilt or shame for wanting things. I don't have to, force myself to not want things or pretend that I don't want things. I want to try lots of different things, lots of different brands and colors and nibs, and the scope of what I want to try is much broader than the scope of my current collection. And one way that I can deal with that is find new, more sustainable ways to try new things, such as through pen or ink trades or borrowing, and trying before you buy, whether that's at a meetup or just someone else who happens to have a pen, or at a fountain pen show. And pen friends are a really great way to do that, to kind of share and try out and find new ways to try things without necessarily committing to buying them first. And so I think that is all really fun, and a lot of those are kind of just my thoughts on the fountain pen hobby and where I'm at in my consumption journey. I don't typically have a problem with overconsumption, I don't think, but I do want to work on slow consumption and giving myself more freedom and grace to enjoy the hobby while not losing sight of what it is about the hobby that interests me in the first place. But that is all that I have for you today. Let me know your thoughts and maybe where you're at in your journey with the fountain pen and ink hobby down in the comments. I love to hear from you guys. And if you liked this and you want to stick around, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I will have the next chapter of my story out soon. Bye for now. Love, share.